Hey, it's Art from my new microphone, and in today's video, we're taking a trip back to the 1980s. I'm going to show you how to set up and use gated reverb in your mixes. So without any further ado, let's hop right into Logic Pro, and I'll show you how to set this up. All right, here we are inside of Logic Pro to discuss gated reverb. In this session, we will be working on a song called Normal by my good friend Lukey. And because gated reverb is so popular on snare drums, we are going to be looking at it primarily on the snare drum. And so in this particular session, these drums are programmed. So we are going to get a very clean signal being sent to the effects return that we are inserting the gated reverb on. However, we can have a brief listen to the snares just to get a sense of what they sound like in solo, dry. So they do sound a little bit gated already. They have a pretty abrupt ending and there's no bleed in between, but we could use gated reverb on acoustic drums for great effect as well. So let's start by sending both of these snares to their effect return. Let's use bus 32 for this example. Let's send them 100% or unity. And now let's scroll over and create a track so that we get it nice and close right here in both the mixer and in the arrangement view right here. So now we have snare 1 and snare 2 being sent to bus 32. Bus 32 is coming in on this effects return right here. And now this is going to be our gated reverb. And so what do we need for a gated reverb? We need a reverb and a gate, hence the name. Let's just use the little plate because it's right here. This is a Sound Toys plugin based on the EMT 140, a great sounding reverb and a great sounding reverb plugin. And let's reduce a bit of the low end right here and just have a listen to this. So we are sending these two snares at unity to this effects return right here that only has a reverb on it right now. Okay, play So that is a nice long reverb right there, and it kind of pushes the snare back, even though it does make it sound massive. And so what we may want to do is gate it. So after the reverb, what we want to do is put a noise gate here. And what I will use for this is just the stock one from the dynamics processing inside Logic Pro, the noise gate. And the trick here with the gated reverb is that we don't want it acting on the signal in the signal path right here being sent through it. What we want it to do is act on a side chain. We want that side chain to be the transient version, the dry version of that snare. So let's go here to snare 1. We could choose snare 2 as well. Let's choose snare 2 because it's a bit more transient. If we zoom in right here, we can see that the signal dies out a little bit faster on snare 2. So we'll use snare 2 as the side chain for this gated reverb. So noise gates, as the name would suggest, are designed to gate out noise. They are particularly effective on periodic instruments, things like toms, where you will hit the tom, you want that tom to sound, but then the rest of the time when the tom's not being hit, there's just a bunch of bleed from the acoustic kit. We could gate out all of that noise, all of that bleed, and then only have the gate open when the tom drum is actually hit. Very useful for things of that nature. However, we can also use it, obviously, in gated reverb. So what we have here is a gated reverb that is being sidechained or triggered by the dry snare right here, the snare 2 in this case. So whenever the snare 2 is present, it will open up the gate and then the gate will close. And what I have to do is go and turn low latency monitoring mode off. And now there's going to be significant latency in my voice. I apologize for that to myself and to you. Let's have a listen to what's going on here. So you notice that it is opening and then closing again. So a threshold of about -63 dB is a good starting point. And then we can adjust the attack, hold, and release times to adjust the amount that this gate is held open, even though the snare that is feeding it drops below the set threshold. So by increasing the hold time, we can effectively allow this gate to stay open longer than it naturally would, given just this threshold right here. So let's adjust this in the context of the mix.
Oh yeah. That's what I'm talking about. Say it one more again. When I'm feeling about things.
And in this case, we have it open on the upbeat on that snare, and then we have it close on the following downbeat when the kick comes in. So I think that this is a pretty decent timing for a track like this, about 340 milliseconds hold time at a BPM of 82, really allows that snare drum to hit and ring out until the next downbeat, and then the gate closes again. So let's have another listen right here to the timing.
Feeling about things no more. I be writing stuff. That's a fact. Because I need a touch of psychosis in me.
So I think that that sounds pretty good for this mix right here. And it's a little bit loud, I think, so we can now mix it to taste. I'm also going to add in a bit of EQ right here where I might want to bring up some of the top end, but most notably take out some of that muddiness in this reverb right here. Now, this is by no means a mixed song right here. This is more so in a production stage, but I'm just going to go ahead and add a little bit of EQ after the fact right here.
That's not me asking for. Just simply stating the fact now. Get on with it. Cause when I'm going about things no more, I be writing stuff. What up with that? What up with that? Because my feet, they get afraid of the river sea. Maybe you do, maybe you don't.
And maybe I want that to be a bit panned out, and so I don't want it right up the center with the snare. Maybe I could use something like the Waves doubler. Let's go down here to Waves and make this stereo. Let's get rid of the center image and only have information panned to the sides. And what we have here is detuning on the left and right, plus a -6 cents respectively, a bit of delay, and of course the panning right here. So let's have a listen to what this sounds like. I'm trying to really drive the reverb out to the sides and not have it in the center image. So I think that that's coming along, but then when we were listening to it in the verse, when there's vocals, it can be a little bit distracting. Let's have a listen here.
That's what I'm talking about. Say it one more again. When I'm feeling about things no more.
So a little bit distracting in the verse, but I think it sounds fine underneath the bass solo here. And what about at this drum fill?
Okay, play bass now.
So it's a little bit much at the drum fill right here. So what I can actually go do now is adjust the volume of the gated reverb right here and bring this down so that we're only getting it right at the beginning. And then we can get rid of it as well into the verse. Or maybe not get rid of it entirely, but just bring it way down in level. Now, an additional way of doing this, and probably the better way of doing this, is to actually adjust the sends right here and effectively make this like a effects throw, although we are sending it for much longer than a throw. And so what we can do here is in snare 1 and snare 2, go to main in the case of Logic Pro, go automate the send. And what we can do here is effectively turn the volume that is being sent, or the amount that is being sent to the gated reverb up at this section. Or alternatively, we could, because I want this muted anyway, we could go to main and then send mute to the gated reverb and then automate it so that it is muted right up until this first downbeat underneath the solo. And I can do the same thing for this one right here, so that it effectively turns these sends on for this hit. So you can see right here, they are turned off right here, being sent to bus 32, which is our gated reverb. And then right after that, they are turned on. So this would sound a little something like this.
Fuck. Okay, play bass
And then going into the verse.
Oh, yeah.
Bring those drums back.
That's what I'm talking about.
And then we push it out of the way for the verse so that it's not so distracting underneath the vocal, although we do have a more powerful sounding gated reverb snare underneath the bass solo right here. So that is basically gated reverb in a nutshell, and a few additional extracurriculars we can do about it in our mixes. And I hope that that has been useful for you. Let's hop out of Logic Pro. All right, now you know how to set up and use gated reverb in your productions and mixes, and I would encourage you to try this out in your next few mixes to get a hang of how to set this up. If you'd like to learn more about mixing, I do have a free mixing guidebook. It will be the first link in the description box down below. You can sign up to my newsletter and I will send it to you right away for free. It goes through the entire mixing workflow to help you make the right decisions at the right times to help improve your mixes and the consistency from mix to mix. If you'd like to spend more time with me here on YouTube, I would encourage you to hit that like button if you like this video, and also to subscribe here to the My New Microphone YouTube channel for more information on music production and mixing. And finally, I will leave a few other videos here in the top left and top right corner if you're interested in checking one of those out. And I will see you in the next one. Cheers.